Analyzing the BBI, is it a bridge or is it a burden? My guest in studio tonight, Narok Senator Ledama Olekina, Daisy Amdani, women rights practitioner or activist, as well as Majority Whip of the National Assembly, Emmanuel Wangwe. And just before we took a break to go to business and sports news, a lot of issues were raised by the Narok Senator Ledama Olekina on the role of the Senate, which a number of speakers disagreed with, from Musalia Mudavadi to the Deputy President, Dr. William Ruto, the expansion of the executive, minority groups and some of the issues they had raised before, and the land question, some of the issues that were raised there by the Senator for Narok. I'd like to start with you, Emmanuel Wangwe. As a majority whip of the National Assembly, you started by saying Bomas was good today, and this is a good report. So what are your thoughts on some of these divergent views, and especially on the role and the powers of the Senate and the expanded executive that seems to be the major bone of contention currently?
Thank you very much. I still want to reinstate that this is a very good report, and I want to thank the team for that. For what my good colleague and Senator Oledama said, I want to say that the issue of the Senate, in my view, is first and foremost supposed to be an upper house. We should separate the two, not to leave it where it is. But the issue is, this is a report, and Honorable Senator Ledama knows very well that a report is a document which we can vary. In my view is, this report has come to us, and the views he's having today are also held by people like us in a personal capacity, like the MP for Navaholo. And I would share with him and say, we need to enrich the document and improve on it in the respect of the Senate, so that let it come outright and be the upper house, number one. Number two, let it have the explicit way of a role in terms of checking the counties. So let it be the overall authority in terms of oversight of the counties, because we are already giving counties 35%. If at all we've been seeing some challenges with the counties with 15%, what is it that's going to happen when they get 35%? This is a conversation which now, this is the right time. Now that the Building Bridges team has given us this report, can we enrich it together so that we have a better and better document going forward, which accommodates the views of the Senate and how we want the Senate to govern us. About the issue of the land, I wouldn't want to comment much, because land issue is a very thorny issue. I really want maybe to engage Honorable Adam and to give me more and more, or shed more light on what he wanted.
Speak about the expansion of the executive.
I've been with him in Narok.
Yes.
And we once overflow them out together, and he knows very well how we discussed on board about Mau. So it is a challenge which we can share and see how best he can come up with. I wouldn't really want to whip into that. About the issue what my sister Daisy mentioned about intolerance that went on in Bomas today, I would want to say intolerance is not a good thing per se. We should allow people to talk. And actually, what we saw at the tail end of the whole issue, it is not a good thing in terms of handling speakers when they come to address us. My view is the future we should control on how we approach people of divergent views. Let's give them their time to talk and then come up with a solution. What I would want to encourage those who spoke, like the former party leader, Honorable Musalia was my party leader when I was in UDF last parliament, so I still accord him the respect that he gave me up to today. So like his part was not a big issue, my sister Daisy, but he just, it's something which he tried to mention and people went over it. So in my view is, let him now bring it at this time. Actually, he's the one who brought the topic of the Senate, and he really highlighted what the Senate is supposed to be. Him being a former finance minister, he touched the issue of the debt. In my opinion, I feel it is something which should also be put clearer, because that was a 5-minute talk. He can make it better and give us some facts on how we can now improve in terms of our debt ratio, because he mentioned the issue that we will be spending more money paying debts rather than sending that money to the counties.
All
so
right.
I feel it is something which now we can invite him and shed more light at this time before the report now gets into a bill which will now go into the assembly. Remember, Daisy being a lawyer, as I know, she knows that once the report is converted into a bill, we will not be able to really change it. So according to me, this is the best time which we should now invite those leaders who spoke about various divergent issues that they can now enrich the bill for us.
All right. Daisy, another big issue that was raised today, and when we talk about the Senate and, watering down its role, Deputy President William Ruto spoke to the act of trying to achieve the 2/3 gender role. So on one hand, we are saying we're increasing the number of women at the Senate, and on the other hand, it would seem we are relegating them to a house with no powers. Your thoughts on that?
First of all, I'd like to correct the Honourable Majority Whip. I'm not a lawyer, but I am a women's rights advocate, but not a lawyer. So, first of all, for me, I think that we need to understand exactly what the BBI is about. The 2/3 gender principle has been a thorny issue since 2011. 2011, it's actually been 9 years since we have been discussing the 2/3 gender principle and its application and implementation in the National Assembly, in the Parliament and at the national level. For BBI to purport to be amending the Constitution and does not address itself to the gender question, which affects over half of the population. And I am on record saying that I actually believe that the president and this administration used the 2/3 gender principle to undermine and begin to unravel the Constitution 2010. Because if you can successfully marginalize over half of your population, then everything else is fair game. And we are beginning to see it here. So the BBI does not address itself at all to the gender question. Moving the women reps who already exist in the 2010 Constitution to the Senate does not address the issue. That is number one. The other thing, there is somebody who has said that it doesn't go wrong, it starts wrong. This entire initiative has started on a very wrong premise. Yes, the handshake was good insofar as it brought calm and a sense of normalcy and allowed for Kenyans to be able to go back to their day-to-day activities. However, the amendment of the Constitution and the overhaul of the Constitution is not a simple thing. We must ask the question, what is the urgency? What is the BBI really about? Kenyans right now are grappling with many things. The Honorable Musalia Mudavadi mentioned it in Bomas today. He talked about the economy, the need to grow the economy so that even some of these lofty proposals of devolving 35% to the counties can actually be fulfilled. Because right now, our debt repayments in the year 2020, our debt repayment is 904 billion. That's more than what is being devolved to the counties. That's an issue that we need to talk about. We are in the midst of a health pandemic. What is so urgent that the government cannot address itself to the health crisis, the economic crisis? We have children who are not in school. We have people who have lost jobs. So Kenyans are actually grappling with so many issues, Akisa. And right now, we are being told that BBI is a priority. BBI is looking at overhauling this constitution, but what it does, it also negates the principle of the sovereignty of people. Let me give you the example of the proposals for IEBC. Now, in Kenya, people think elections are about politicians and political parties.
Right.
They are not. Akisa, allow me to make this point.
Okay, go ahead.
Elections are about the people of Kenya. The sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya. Elections are about the people of Kenya, not about politics. It's about expressing their will of who is going to populate the different arms of government that are delegated. The sovereign power of the people is delegated. So to suggest that divisive elections will be solved by now making the electoral management body a political body negates the principle of independence and having an electoral management body that is there to be a neutral arbiter to ensure that the expression of the will of the people is manifested in the elections and that political parties adhere to the Constitution. If BBI was to address the issue of divisive election, the place we need to address it is that the political parties. There is nothing said of the Office of the Registrar of Political Parties, who is the regulator of political parties. Regulate them and ensure that they adhere to the Constitution and guarantee the inclusivity principle.
Okay.
So when I look at this thing,
Daisy,
this is not about Kenya.
This is not about
It's
Kenya.
about individuals.
Right.
It's about individuals.
And you mentioned the aspect of inclusivity, which every leader who spoke seemed to talk about. Words we throw around, inclusivity, uniting Kenyans. But there's a very interesting tweet, Senator Olekina, you made today, and I will read it verbatim. Who forced the BBI task force to create an all-powerful president in the name of inclusivity? Was this the same person influencing the revenue formula? And of course, that's a tweet you made about 4 hours ago, Senator Ledama Olekina. What do you mean? Do you see an upper hand in this?
Yes, I do. I think there's a lot of mischief. I know one of the leaders of one of the political parties indicated that when you read the document, you don't see any mischief. But for us who have gone through this process, we haggled through a very vigorous process during the revenue formula. And when you read the text of the BBI report, you will find the same sentiments which were being expressed by a particular group of people. So when you ask yourself, why is it that people do not want a check and balance system? Because when you think about separating state and government, you know, when you see other development, other countries or democracies, that principle has worked very well. You separate, you let government run the government, you know, through laws, you let the state be something that unifies the whole country. When one of my biggest pet peeves is fusion between the National Assembly and the executive. How then do you expect the executive to be oversighted by the National Assembly? When you now remove the Senate and you make it just a house to pay some people's salaries, what would I be doing in the Senate if I'm just earning a salary and I'm not helping this nation? So one of the things that we must do, and I hope that the executive is currently listening, the powers that be are listening, is that we must find a solution on this fusion between the National Assembly and the executive. That is issue number one. Issue number two, we must also clearly, like my good friend, the minority leader from the National Assembly has said, we must make sure that we make the Senate an upper house. What do we mean by this? Every piece of legislation, if you look at the amendment laws, which have been defined in the BBI report as attachments, there's a devolution law, there's a public participation, there's a public order, the National Economic and Social Council bill, there is a prompt payment bills, there's a PFM Act, there's a Public Audit Act, there's a, Control of Budget Act. These are things that ought to be checked by two houses, you know. The problem we've had is that we've had serious issues. The current Senate has gone to court, to petition court, you know, so that it can repeal certain pieces of legislations which were passed through an omnibus bill, you know, by the National Assembly and taken to the president for them to be assigned into law, which have continued creating a lot of problems. If you ask the Council of Governors, they will tell you this issue of the KEMSA Act, which was amended in the National Assembly, and KEMSA was made the sole procurement entity for the Ministry of Health, and also all county government mandated to buy their medical equipment from KEMSA was only done by the National Assembly. The Senate was not involved. So the reason why you must have this process where if any piece of legislation, if it is passed by the National Assembly, with now this fusion between the National Assembly and the executive, it is counter-checked by the Senate. so that we can ensure that people are not coerced. We've really gained a lot. I miss President Kibaki. When President Kibaki came, he brought in a sense of unity into this country. Everyone was ready for a change. Gentlemen and ladies,
Senator, so
we
then...
can back. We must be able to make sure that we move fast so that we come up with a constitution that guarantees that it does not matter who comes to become the leader of this nation. Anyone will be free to be able to develop this country. But the way we are doing it, if you look at now the expansion of the executive, it is as if, people are tired of having a Senate that counter checks and ensure that they protect the people, and they want an all-powerful president who will be able to veto any decision made by any House of Parliament. I think it is also imperative that Kenyans really understand the role of the two Houses of Parliament, because in most cases, even the drafters of this, BBI report, 90% of the time, they refer to the National Assembly. So people, even out there, wananchi out there, think that Parliament is only the National Assembly. In fact, you'll even hear, even lawyers, even sometimes you can even hear the Chief Justice referring to Parliament as a National Assembly. Yet the Parliament is made up of the two houses. So really, we must be prepared. We must be pragmatic. We must be prepared to come up with a document that will outlive us.
Right.
We cannot line our own interest, lining our own pockets. We must think about the poor people.
So, Senator Ledama, so then is it a complete no for you for this particular report? Is it a complete no?
I think it's a document that must be improved. It is a document that we must divorce our own selfish political interest, and we put the interest of this nation ahead. In fact, if you read that report, I would say that report is 90% about politicians and 10% about the people of this country. So really, for me to support this report, it must be demystified. The people of Kenya must be told. There are certain things which are just raised in this report where people talk about the World Development Fund. Kenyans ought to know that in the same report, it says that even that World Development Fund will not be run by the MCAs. So the MCA should not be quick enough to say we are going to support this report because we'll have World Development Fund. My friends,
okay.
The reality is this: you will not have any control of it. So let's be honest. Let us be candid. Let us, let us focus on facts and ensure that we focus on developing a nation that will be able to outlive us.
Honorable Wangwe, as the Majority Whip at the National Assembly, you're the custodian of the government of the day's interests in this particular house. You have said personally you are uncomfortable with some of the recommendations or proposals in this particular report. So given the position you hold, how are you going to handle this? Because some bills will make their way to Parliament. How are you going to, is it going to be a very dicey affair for those in positions of leadership like yourself?
Thank you very much. And that's why I said from the word go that this is the time to open this conversation that we are in now. And this conversation we are doing now, this evening, should be converted into a write-up to the BBI team, the initiative team, so that they can take stock of what their report entails and what is it that the reaction of the Kenyan people as far as that report is concerned. Remember, in the constitution amendment or making process, once now this document has moved, transformed from the report into the bill, it will be very difficult. In our own current constitution, you cannot amend what has come onto the floor as a bill. Therefore, this is the time which, by the current constitution, we can make a conversation, make our input, and open a clear indication of what we also feel of the report. I would want maybe to take you back one step on the reaction by my colleague, the Senator Ledama. He said that the president has too much veto power to veto the two houses, a situation which is the same in the current constitution. Therefore, I do not want to see, I don't see any change in the current constitution in terms of veto power between the current constitution and what is being proposed in the BBI. Number two, my sister Daisy has said that this amendment seems to be personal centered. Somebody is engineering the amendments. I would want to say I'm not seeing that being the position. Why am I saying so? Is because we have, this team has gone across the entire 47 counties. And my good friend, the Senator Ledama, has said he actually presented the report, but the report was not put into consideration. Therefore, in my view, it is not meant for a particular person. Instead, what we have to look into is if there is a page or a verse or a chapter which is not really conforming to what you feel is correct, then we put up our position the way we are putting now and correct it forward. About what you asked me on how we are going to handle this report when it comes to the House, members have expressed different views about this report. Myself, I feel I need to support the issue of Senate being an upper house, and I'm going to qualify that position as in my capacity as a member of parliament for Nabaholo, where I'm allowed also to do that. Other members have also expressed a concern that CDF has been unlawfully challenged, and it has kept on transforming from CDF to NGCDF to another case and another case. What can we do in terms of now the amendment that is on? They also have their own proposal to bring to the committee. Should the committee not accept, we will now have to take a bite and say, let the country move forward. Should my proposal not carry the day in terms of encouraging the Senate to be an upper house? And me, Senator Ledama, I'm looking at the Senate being an upper house from two angles. One, that we are giving a lot of money to the counties. The Senate is the mother and the father and the custodian of the county governance in this country. We want to enrich it and give it more power to look at that. Number two, I would want to look at the final authority in terms of checks and balances of bills emanating from the National Assembly. Mm-hmm. How do we then encourage that the Senate can do a check and balance for the bills which are emanating from the National Assembly only but touching on the county government? All right. So we need to improve on the two and make it a more stronger house to help us govern this country in that perspective. Another big issue that saw the crowds at the Bomas of Kenya very, very uncomfortable, and this is still on you, Honorable Wangwe. The first person to talk about it was Honorable Musalia Mudavadi, ANC party leader, saying that we will be messing up with the independence of the judiciary if we allow the executive to appoint the ombudsman. The deputy president as well spoke about this and said we need to be very careful about independent institutions in this country. As a majority whip, I'd really like to hear your thoughts on that. Who should then appoint the ombudsman to the judiciary? ANC party leader Musalia Mudavadi said perhaps it should go back to the Chief Justice. This is one of the contentious issues that came out today. Thank you very much. One, the Honorable Musalia Mudavadi agreed that we need to have an ombudsman in JSC. But now the issue is he doesn't want the ombudsman to be appointed by the president. He did not give the clarification as to why he doesn't want. The Honorable, the Deputy President, also my Deputy Party Leader, said that he outrightly doesn't want to see the Ombudsman in the JSC, and said that the past has held that most of if Ombudsman is in JSC, the executive of the day can easily compromise the judiciary. Therefore, in my view, I do not have an outright position to say why the ombudsman should leave or not, but I would want to say it like this for today, that the Committee on Implementation, or the Committee on BBI, in the analysis, they have given us that the reason as to the role of the ombudsman, who will be part of the JSC and will take stock of all the complaints that will come into from the general citizen on what is happening in the judiciary. I feel it's a right thing for the ombudsman to sit in the judiciary, and if at all is going to sit there and is going to be appointed by the Chief Justice, who is the president of the Judiciary, JSC, it means he will work at the mercy of the Chief Justice.
So you support him being appointed by the president? Person. You support him being appointed by the president?
If we say definitely above the president of Supreme Court, it will be the president of the Republic of Kenya. So in my view, it has no problem if at all the president will appoint the ombudsman to sit in the JSC.
Thank you. Danny, I'd really like you to speak on this. We're talking about the independence of the judiciary, the independence of the police service in this country, separation of powers. The aspect of separation of powers as well, it seems to have rattled a lot of people. Do you hold the same view that perhaps this document is not cognizant of the aspect of separation of powers and the independence of other institutions?
Let me be very particular about the JSC, which now we say the separation of powers.
Okay.
Today,
quickly, because I want to go to Amdani. Thank you.
The judges are selected by JSC, but appointed by the president. What I feel is we need to put a mechanism. The journey to the appointment of the ombudsman should be a selection maybe through the JSC as a normal process and appointed by the president. So according to me, it's the journey of appointment that we are going to narrow down and trim. But we cannot say there is a conflict in terms of the roles of the executive and the judiciary.
All right.
In that manner, there is no conflict of the roles.
All right. I'd like you to speak on this, Amdani.
On the issue of the independence of the institution?
Yes.
I think I have concerns about the manner in which, particularly when we talk about the police oversight, that now there is this National Police Council that will be chaired by the CS Interior, and that basically sort of like removing the police oversight, which kind of negates the principle in the Constitution 2010, which seeks to have a police service that is oversighted by a civilian oversight to guarantee that they are Republican in nature. So there are very many issues that are problematic. The judiciary, we have suspicions, and they are legitimate suspicions. We have seen every effort aimed at emasculating the judiciary and the JSC. Right now, as things stand, the president has refused to appoint the 41 judges that were vetted by the JSC, despite a court order, despite having the Attorney General sit in as a member of the JSC. And remember that there are more than, it's not just judicial officers that sit in the JSC. We have members of the LSK, we have the Attorney General, and we have a person representing, other interests. So for the president to arbitrarily decide on his own and come up with all manner of excuses when he had the opportunity through his representatives to raise whatever issues around the judges that are to be appointed, that already is a red flag. It tells us that even these proposals of the judiciary ombudsman, and we're not saying that the judiciary should not be oversighted, it is the manner in which it will be oversighted and the nature of that oversight and the powers of the presidency. It is very easy from what we've seen and the pattern that office of the judiciary ombudsman can be used as an avenue to even intimidate judges, and that the president can try and use his powers, or rather powers that he doesn't have, or give himself powers so that through the judiciary ombudsman, he is able to then control the judiciary. And given the proposals in the BBI that essentially merge the legislature and the executive, what we will have is the imperial presidency. As Senator Ledama Olekina has said, that there is a fundamental principle enshrined in the 2010 Constitution that separates all these institutions. The executive is separate from the legislature, which is supposed to oversight the executive, represent the people, and be custodians of the public purse, and the judiciary that is there to interpret the Constitution and also deliver justice. Now, what we have seen in practice, despite the clear delineation of the roles in the current Constitution, is that this administration and this president has sought to erode those checks and balances to the extent now that the suspicions that people have are legitimate and cannot be wished away. And so we would want to see, I like what Honorable Wangwe says, that let's see the path to the appointment of the Judiciary Ombudsman, because nobody is saying that we don't want an oversight body for the judiciary.
All right.
But we are saying the process actually really does matter, and the powers exactly where they lie.
Okay.
Because if we really emasculated the National Assembly in the proposals, then it will simply be a rubber stamp for the executive, which we have already seen the current one is.
All right. Not too much time left. I'd like us to look at the politics of the day. Senator Ledama, so then which way do we go? Your party, of course, due to the handshake, is in full support of this particular BBI initiative led by the party leader. So then the battle lines have been drawn. The campaign season for the BBI for and against has begun. Which way for you? Your party or your principles?
I think that would be a very, very dangerous direction for any country to follow. I think it's a time for us to have a conversation, and this conversation is very clear. And one of the things that I want to try and demystify for Kenyans to know is the difference between a state and a government. I think the drafters of this BBI report confuse those two terminologies. I want Kenyans to know that a state is permanent, and all these ideas that they have could have been better if they had completely separated a government and a state. A government comes and goes. It goes through either a revolution, it goes through an election cycle where you have a new government. The idea of a president, a very powerful president that appoints an ombudsperson, appoints the prime minister, would be welcome if there was a clear separation between a state and a government. But in this case, because of selfish interest, those who are drafting this report were not doing so independently. They were being controlled, just like we saw it in the Senate. They could not be able to differentiate between what a state is and what a government is.
Who was controlling this committee?
Okay, government, the BBI task force. Government is very temporary. So for us to move forward, I think it would be important that the speakers of the two houses of parliament, who I know they are ex-official members, they are not political, but for them to play their role of just refereeing and saying, gentlemen, take these legislative proposals that have been drafted by this BBI group, look at them, look at the reality of them, have like a joint committee between the two levels of the two houses, go through the Public Finance Management Act, look at it, look at the regulations that affects the county government's operations, look at the Public Audit Act, go through it, look at the powers that are being given to all these institutions. Do they really comply with the spirit of a temporary government or a state? In terms of the issue of the executive, it is important that we move away from that. I think the biggest problem that we have is that 90% of this report is really focused on that, on the executive, the expansion of the executive.
Right.
People are saying it's an all-inclusive, but it's really not.
Okay,
If we can define this better, it is not. I don't agree with the storyline that you're trying to put across that the battle lines are drawn. So no, they're not. I would like to see a situation whereby all over the country, unanimously agree to go to a referendum, having agreed all these things. We don't want a situation where we are dividing this country between the no and the yes. And finally, on this point, it is important that we maintain the Senate as 47 elected senators because of the vote.
Okay.
Because if you vote, they take away the power of the senators to vote.
All right.
So when you do that, you retain that, but we look at ways where administratively we can begin implementing the 2/3 gender rule administratively.
Thank you. Thank you. We don't have...
That we would like to Kenyans that sending the women to the Senate will cure that issue.
Thank you. We don't have too much time left. As we finish up, Amdani, looking at President Uhuru Kenyatta, Deputy President William Ruto, ODM leader Raila Odinga, their body language, their speeches today, do you see willingness, or are you confident that we are steering this country to the right direction from the kind of leadership we have?
Well,
very
in my
quickly,
honest
I'd like
opinion,
us to wrap up.
I didn't see a unity of purpose. I didn't see building bridges. I saw building bridges and burning bridges. And I think that it's time for us to be honest with ourselves as Kenyans.
Thank you.
And agree on the conversation that we need to have. I don't think that BBI is the conversation that we need to have right now. I don't think that amending, or rather overhauling the Constitution, which is what BBI proposes to do, is the conversation we should have now. We need to have a conversation on how to rescue the Kenyan economy, how to address that problem, and even how to rescue Kenya from a leadership that doesn't seem to want to address itself to the problems bedeviling people. That, for me, is really the conversation we need to have.
Honorable Wangwe, as we wind up, a lot of people seem to think we have misplaced priorities for this. So how do we sell this to Kenyans?
Thank you. We don't have
under a minute.
We don't have misplaced ideas now. We have placeful ideas as we talk now through the BBI. The people who cause trouble are the political class. And if you settle the political leadership in terms of how they come in terms of how they are placed where they are, then you would create a proper environment to discuss on how to grow your economy. You will now create a proper environment on how to discuss on how to take the country forward. Therefore, through this BBI, we are getting the issue of inclusivity in terms of the fixing of the executive, where the winner should not take everything home.
Thank you.
And just share within himself. Instead, we can see that the winner is going to share power with the president and the prime minister. And this was very much well explained in terms of today, the president delegates the supervision authority to say now today to Matiang'i, or CS Matiang'i. But now the prime minister shall have the authority from the constitution itself.
I'd like us to end there.
Once the prime minister is appointed or elected, he becomes the official coordinator of national government. Therefore, according to me, by virtue of releasing that authority from the president himself, he has shared power with the prime minister. So in my view, this is the right document. The time is now to discuss. Let us bring all the divergent views on the table so that we iron out and go into the flip side when we are united as one.
So let's see how that goes. Thank you for joining us, gentlemen and lady. Tonight, Daisy Amdani, Executive Director, Community Advocacy and Awareness Trust, as well as a women rights activist, Ledama Olekina, Senator in Narok County, Emmanuel Wangwe, Member of Parliament Navajo and Majority Whip in the National Assembly. Thank you for joining us. It's a conversation we'll keep having, so I'll be calling on to you to continue to dissect a number of these issues, even as it is now being thrown back to the Kenyans to read this particular report. And I would personally urge you to really take a look at this particular report and make an informed decision. Let's take a look at other stories. Parliament and 47 county assemblies will be the next stop for the constitution review process after today's official